Assalamu alaikum, wonderful people. I wanted to talk about the recent earthquakes in Turkey and Syria from a theological and spiritual angle and see what are the implications, especially with respect to suffering and good and evil. Unfortunately, the earthquake in Turkey and Syria is a major catastrophe. It caused tens and thousands of people to die. The death toll is rising day by day. My thoughts and prayers are with those who are suffering and who have suffered in this natural disaster. This earthquake raises important theological questions about natural evil and moral evil, and sometimes a combination of both. And in this case, there is a combination. And natural evil is usually defined as something caused by natural disasters without human intervention or involvement as active agents. And moral evil is sometimes defined as suffering and evil caused by the actions of human beings. So if we can keep this in mind as we are discussing this, it will be great. Now the Quran says in Surah Zilzal, بِأَنَّ رَبَّكَ أَوْحَى لَهَا, with respect to earthquakes. This means your Lord given the earth revelation or inspiration to move. So basically, Islamically, we believe that everything is created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, created by God. So the earth is a very important planet, and what happens on earth is known, is within the knowledge of God and within the creative action of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is God who has commanded the earth. So in a way, earth receives revelation in the form of natural laws and however they act, and the earthquakes happen by that trigger. But is this really evil or not? And this is the main question that I want to address. So if God is the one who's causing and creating the earthquake, is God responsible for the suffering caused by it as well? Well, I'm going to give you 3 points with respect to this aspect of this topic. The first one is that earthquakes do not kill, buildings do. Now just imagine if there's no buildings around and earthquakes are happening, the ground is moving. Although the ground is moving, doesn't move for you to swallow into it, or unless a tree falls on you, you're not going to die by that movement. So it is the existence of buildings in fault lines or where earthquakes happen that really causes the death of human beings, not the earthquake itself. My second point is that the primary reason why earthquakes happen is really to benefit life on Earth. You know, Earth is a very unique planet. It is made up of a very thin crust, the land upon which we all live, and these crusts move over a fluid magma, which is very thick and very deep, and it's a very fragile crust, and it's a really miracle that it's so stable that it is. But sometimes these tectonic plates move to create mountains, to create valleys, so that rivers can form, forests can be created, the climate can be affected in a more favorable way for human beings and other life forms to live. In fact, in the recent earthquake in Turkey and Syria happened on the fault line where the Arabian plate meets the Anatolian plate. And that plate is responsible to create the most fertile land that humanity has ever seen. It's called the Fertile Crescent. That's where agriculture started first, more than 12,000 years ago. So these tectonic plates were responsible for humanity to discover agriculture, to have a very mild climate, and foster civilization as we know it. So the earthquakes, these plates do not move, and earthquakes do not happen to really kill. They happen to create favorable living conditions for human beings and all life on Earth. The third point is that earthquakes are an exception rather than the rule, and they happen rarely. In Turkey, the last earthquake was, the major one was 1999, and now we're in 2023, 24 years down the track. They don't happen every day. Sometimes it might happen in very low levels, but the big ones are very rare. So once again, our Creator has created a planet, even though it's moving around the sun faster than a speeding bullet, we don't even feel that speed. We don't feel the vibrations of that movement. And sometimes earthquakes come in for the reasons that I have already explained. So what really kills people and what's really evil about the death caused by natural disasters, especially earthquakes, is the moral evil where humans are involved. And this is what I would like to explain next. Just want to remind you that moral evil is evil that's caused by human action, where humans are the agents and they make choices. With respect to earthquakes and death tolls, I also said that earthquakes do not kill, but buildings do. Sometimes we now know where the fault lines are. Irrespective of that knowledge, authorities and people are still building large populations and locating them in these fault lines. So that's calling for disaster. The more people live, the more buildings there are, the more chances of people dying. The second point is that builders are not following the guidelines to build strong buildings resistant to earthquakes. In some countries like Japan, Chile, a lot more earthquakes happen, but we never hear major loss of lives because the buildings are built properly, earthquake resistance. It's possible to do that. But in developing countries or countries who've got problems or maybe more corruption, buildings are not being built properly. We know, for example, in the recent earthquake in Turkey, there were 4 buildings in a particular location. 3 of them stood, 1 of them collapsed. And the one that collapsed, the builder or the businessman on the lower levels cut down some of the columns to make place for cars or their business. So that building collapsed because of that mistake. In a way, that could have been considered even crime. Humans are largely responsible for poor building constructions, to allow corrupt builders and officials and they're not put to account when these things happen, and then in the next earthquake, the same thing could be repeated. So humans have a lot of responsibility, particularly, I'm not talking about the innocent people, poor people who have to buy a property or live in a place. It's those builders, the officials who approve these buildings, and the politicians who don't have enough regulation of the building industry. So Quran says in chapter 30, verse 41, corruption has appeared on land and the sea as an outcome of what humans' hands have brought. Allah will let them taste of some of the evil and wrongdoings that they have caused. So this clearly Quran is in this verse mentioning about moral evil that humans unfortunately sometimes do. So in a way, natural disasters are a test. It brings out the best and worst in human beings. It brings out the best in human beings because when they happen, a lot of good people rally to support, to raise money and equipment, supplies, and quickly take them to people who are suffering, to alleviate suffering that they may be going through. And then there are those who may take advantage of people suffering on scamming and other ways of taking advantage of people who are suffering. So it is a test, like everything that humans go through. And for those people who are not affected by natural disasters, it's really an opportunity for us to help, show our compassion and our concern for fellow human beings, to feel responsible, to feel the responsibility of alleviating suffering of others, and act on that. And many Muslim organizations and countries even are now offering help, Muslim countries or not, to help the victims in Turkey and Syria. Natural disasters are also a time for prayer and reflection for those who are suffering as well. Just like when the sun is in the middle of the day, it's time for zuhur prayer. When natural disasters happen, it's time, a window for us to pray. The prayer will help those who suffered have some solace and comfort, and reflecting on why this may have happened to them is also an opportunity for them to fix themselves, improve themselves spiritually. It's okay for them, for those who suffered, to think this may have happened because of the sins or mistakes, and then they correct themselves if possible. That's quite appropriate. But for those of us who are not suffering, for us to say, oh, this happened because of people's sins and it's a punishment for them, it's really judgmental. We shouldn't be doing that. In Islamic belief, when innocent people suffer through especially natural disasters, it's considered martyrdom, and their lost property is considered an act of charity. Reported in Sahih al-Bukhari by Abu Huraira, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, the martyrs are 5. The one who dies from a plague, the one who dies from an abdominal disease, the one who drowns, and the one who dies because walls or debris fall on him or her, and the one who dies fighting in the cause of Allah. So this hadith clearly mentions dying by an earthquake as a result of buildings falling and being crushed in that is considered martyrdom, and that's a great rank for those who have suffered, who have passed away. And for us to think of them as that way also consoles us, the survivors of the relatives. I pray for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help those in need who have suffered as a result of this natural disaster and who are continuing to also suffer. My thoughts and prayers are with you. May God bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.